All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to jump right in and demystify one of the most powerful ways you can customize Claude, building your very first skill. Let's do a guided tour.
So, let's start with a problem I think we all know way too well. You ever get that feeling, that déjà vu, when you're explaining the exact same multi-step process for like the 10th time? It doesn't matter if it's for a new team member or, for an AI. That repetition is it's a total drag on getting things done.
Well, this is the solution to that headache, a skill. Think of it as a packaged set of instructions you give to Claude. The best analogy, it's like you're creating a recipe book for all your tasks. You teach it the workflow once, and from then on, Claude knows exactly how to handle it, perfectly, every single time.
Okay, so if a skill is a recipe book, what's actually in it? What are the ingredients and instructions that make it all work? Let's go ahead and unpack the skill folder together. So every single skill folder has these same core parts. First up, you've got skl.md. That's your main recipe card, the core instructions. Then there's the scripts folder. Think of these as your specialized kitchen tools, like Python scripts for heavy lifting. References, that's like the appendix or glossary in the back of the book for all the super detailed info. And finally, assets. This is where you keep all your ingredients and templates.
All right, so you've built this awesome recipe book, but how does Claude know when to even pull it off the shelf? Well, it all starts with what you write on the cover.
This whole process is guided by a really smart design principle called progressive disclosure. Now, I know that sounds kind of technical, but it's really just a fancy way of saying Claude is super efficient. It only reads what it needs to right when it needs it. And why does that matter to you? Well, it means faster responses and lower costs, because you're not wasting a ton of tokens on stuff it doesn't need yet.
So level 1 of this system is something called YAML frontmatter. It's just a little block of text right at the very top of your skill.md file. And this is, literally, the cover of your recipe book. It gives Claude a super quick summary so it can decide in an instant, yep, this is the right skill for the job, or nope, not this one.
And here's a fantastic example of what a good one looks like. See how it's not vague at all? It's super specific, it's actionable, it says exactly what the skill does, and this is the really crucial part, it lists the trigger phrases a user might actually say. Words like sprint, linear tasks, create tickets. This is how Claude knows it's time to grab your recipe book.
Okay, so the big question is, how do you know if the cover of your book is actually working? Well, here's your target. You should be aiming for your skill to trigger automatically on at least 90% of the queries where it's supposed to. That's the benchmark for a really well-designed trigger.
And the cool thing is, you can actually measure this. It's not just guesswork. You can run a bunch of test queries that you know should trigger the skill, and then just track how many times it actually loads up. Then you compare that number to your 90% goal. This is how you fine-tune it and make it better and better.
Okay, so Claude saw the cover of your recipe book, it looked right, and it picked it up. Now what? What happens when it actually opens the pages? This is where we get to levels 2 and 3 of that progressive disclosure thing we talked about.
Level 2 is pretty straightforward. It's the main body of that skl.md file. Everything right below that frontmatter. This is the recipe itself. The full, detailed, step-by-step instructions that walk Claude through the entire process.
And then we have level 3, which I like to call the appendix. These are all those extra files you have in your references or scripts folders. Claude only goes and looks at these when it hits a step in the recipe that says, hey, for more details, see page 200. This is awesome because it keeps the main instructions clean and, you guessed it, saves a ton of valuable tokens.
So here's the whole process in a nutshell. The cover, your YAML frontmatter, is always visible. Claude can always glance at it. The recipe itself, the skl.md body, only gets loaded when the skill is actually triggered. And the appendix, those link styles, are only brought in as needed for those deep dives. It really is a beautifully efficient system, right?
All right, theory is great, but let's see how this all comes together in practice. We're going to walk through a real-world example that uses a super common, super powerful pattern for building skills. And this pattern is called sequential workflow orchestration. All that means is it's perfect for any multi-step process where the steps have to happen in a specific, repeatable order. Think about things like onboarding a new customer or a code deployment pipeline. A classic example is onboarding a new customer, right? I mean, look at these steps. They have a very strict order. You can't set up a payment method before you've even created the account, and you're definitely not going to send a welcome email before their subscription is even active. This is exactly where a sequential workflow skill just shines, making sure Claude never misses a beat or does things out of order.
But, okay, we followed the recipe. Does it actually make a better dish? How do we know for sure that using a skill is an improvement? Well, it's time to prove the value. Let's do a little taste test.
A really solid testing approach, in my opinion, covers 3 key areas. First, you've got triggering. Does the skill actually load when it's supposed to? Second, functional. Does it do the thing it's supposed to do? Does it produce the right output? And third, and this is a big one, performance. Does it actually make things measurably better?
And this, my friends, is the payoff. Just look at this difference. The baseline, without a skill, took 15 messages back and forth and had 3 failed API calls. Ouch. But with the skill, just 2 messages, 0 failures, and it cut the token consumption in half. I mean, that is efficiency you can literally see and measure.
So, to wrap it all up, let's hit the key takeaways. 1. Think of your skills as reusable recipe books for Claude. 2. Use that 3-level progressive disclosure system to be super efficient. 3. Remember that a great trigger description is probably the most critical part of the whole thing. And 4. Always test your skill to prove it's actually making a difference.
I love this quote because it really captures the whole idea here. When you build a skill, you're not just handing Claude a bunch of tools. You're giving it the knowledge, the actual step-by-step instructions to create something that's genuinely valuable for you.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Every single repeatable process you have, every workflow your team does over and over again, it's just a recipe that's waiting to be written down. So the only real question is, what's the first one you're going to teach Claude?